And pigeons. Have you ever seen a pouter pigeon? They have they can poof their chest about 4 times bigger than the whole bird. And then you've got tumbler pigeons, which will fly up, and their brain isn't wired quite right, and they end up just tumbling and tumbling and tumbling until they... So that's human selection, but that's very different because the geneticists are interfering with the descent with modification part. So it's a completely different point in the process that they're messing with.
Isn't that where you could say the dose makes a poison? Because human selection, well, by nature, it goes slowly over time. But what they are doing now is they put it in for a time. I mean, there's no choices anymore.
I know.
It happens so quickly. So the dose makes a poison.
Well, the dose makes the poison is very true in medicine, and it depends on the genetic engineering as to what they're doing. We've found that there are some perfectly normal situations where you have multiple genes doing the same thing, but they're actually different.
But when they make a whole crop Roundup.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that it's not slowly nature selection or human selection or whatever.
No, and also it's short-lived. Something's going to evolve. I mean, just look at the past 150 years. Every time we make a pesticide, the pest evolves to get around it. And look at the multi-resistant strains of Staph aureus and the other things like Klebsiella. People are not making antibiotics very much anymore, the companies. Why? Because they won't work for very long, and they won't make very much money. So now people are sort of going back to the pre-antibiotic age of what can we do? Well, we can use viruses that specifically kill bacteria. We can use a number of things that we can design, if we do it properly, to kill the bacteria and so on. But the future is going to be very different from the last, say, the 60s through 80s when we used antibiotics and we knew what they would do and how they would work, and then suddenly they stopped working.
I have a question. What are your goals for, I mean, your title of the class drew me to the class, Evidence for Evolution. So what are your goals to help me understand?
Well, I pulled out the next couple of handouts, and the next one was going to be a deeper description of Darwin's theory and where it came from, and then I'm going to dive into time and astronomy and cosmology, and then we'll go into radioactive dating. And then the next one will focus more on radioactive dating in detail because there are some specifics that you will need to know to understand. And then after that, believe we'll talk about fossils. And then I'd like to spend a lot of time on DNA and chemistry.
What about the beginning of man? I mean, you talk about that we had gills at one time?
Well, I'll talk about...
I don't know about these things.
Sure. I will. If you're interested in fossils, there's a wonderful book called Evolution by Donald Prothero. The main problem I have with the book is it was written in response to the Dover trials and the creationists who were trying to put creationism in the schools. So the book has a lot of anti-creationist rhetoric. And I think if you can just ignore that, skip over it, just let it go, but read what he says about the fossils. For instance, this lives in the seafloor, has a little mouth, has little tentacles, and it has big spines. What is it? What's that? Sand dollar, supposedly. Well, guess what? In one place, well, in more than one place, but in one place they found layers. Bottom layer, round sea urchins. Top layer, flat, sand dollar. And guess what happened in between? A flatter sea urchin, a fat sand dollar, a skinnier sand dollar, and then what we identify as sand dollars today. All in one set of layers. Boom, 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 boom. And it's awfully hard for me, just as a human being, to say, okay, this was all in clay, and it also had other things in it which could be identified as time markers, so that you could say these are numbers completely off the top of my head. 100 million years ago. This might be 50 million years ago, and this is today. And I think this is an absolutely marvelous example of tangible evolution that I just really find appealing.
But it's assuming that the sea urchin disappears, right?
No, because you'll find that there are still sea urchins all the way up.
Oh,
But if you're looking for sand dollars, there are no sand dollars down here. There are no sand dollars down here. And the thing that looks like a sand dollar that's here doesn't look like a sand dollar. You're making me jump ahead. Sand dollar?
Not really, they're much flatter.
Kind of fat.
They're much flatter, so it's-
Yeah, they're much flatter than that. This belongs here,
yeah.
somewhere in here. I should get a real sand dollar, but a real sand dollar is like this.
Yeah.
So I have in my hand what looks, and it has the 5-star shape, which looks an awful lot like a sand dollar, but it ain't. Well, it is, but it was. Oh, phooey. And I have other fossils and a fossil experiment that we'll be jumping into when we get to that point.
And you don't go into creationism as opposed as a way of proving this one right and
No, because, well, actually, no, it's really quite simple. The moment someone says God did it, you don't have any more questions, right?
Yeah. Right.
You can't exactly say, listen, would you kind of vary the experiment for me and show me something different? Kind of hard. So if somebody says, well, I don't think evolution could possibly do this, so it must have been God, scientists can't really address that. Some are trying to, but there are many scientists who are religious. There are scientists who are religious who accept evolution as a fact, and there are scientists who don't.
well, you could label the whole process as godlike, right? Which is, I mean,
Depends on what you mean by that. I will be talking about the Big Bang and some other things, and so you can, and the thing is, no, those are so hypothetical that we have a lot of supporting evidence, but I'll tell you, anybody tells you that they know why that happened, don't listen to them.
How can you have scientists that are religious, believe in God, but it's something you cannot prove?
True, but the science they're working in doesn't have to involve.
God, I see. So they're not the
So
real
I could be a
scientists.
chemist,
Yeah.
and
I have to jump
Please,
in
go
right
ahead.
now. What about the quantum physics, the new physics now? This is where...
we'll be talking about it.
Are you going to discuss any of this?